So we're starting today just outside of Hathersage. Hathersage is kind of over that way somewhere. And it's a beautiful day today. Looks like there's no chance of rain. Maybe even get a bit of sunshine on my pasty white arms. As ever with Peak District villages, it's an old one. Another one that's listed in the Doomsday Book. In 1066, when that book was written, it belonged to Leofric and his brother Leonorth. Brilliant names. By 1086, there'd been a change of hands. It belonged to a guy called Ralph. No more name given. There were listed 8 people, 8 villagers living in the village at the time. One can only imagine the bloody battle that took place, the changing of the guard. So about a mile in, and walking beside the River Derwent. If I were so inclined, and I decided I wanted to take a swim for 15 or so miles and eventually find the Chatsworth Estate. Go check out my video on Lees Moor. And then even further down I'd find Cromford and Arkwright's Mill and Canal. Go check out my video on Cromford Moor and Harborough Rocks. So where are we off to today then? 4 Ethels on the list. Although I'm not sure one of them's you shall judge. First up, Higger Tor, brilliant Ethel, really good prominence, 400 plus metres. Next up, Stanage Edge, no issues with that one, got a trig point. Stanage Pole. Interesting place, and you should listen on. Here's my issue with it. It's about 500 yards from Stanage Edge. There's no real change in altitude, no real change in elevation from Stanage Edge, which is legitimate, to Stanage Pole. It's on the list. I'm gonna tick it. The final one is High Neb, which will be the highest point of the walk and of all of my Ethels so far. So just coming into the bottom end of Padley Gorge, which is a beautiful and unspoilt forest. As the name implies, it's in a gorge. It's quite a steep-sided valley that it's contained within. It's a site of special scientific interest because it's a temperate rainforest. And there aren't many of those left in the UK. Certainly not virgin rainforests like Padley Gorge. It's part of the Longshore Estate. Just off the Longshore Estate. Which our friend Ethel has had a hand in preserving. Originally in the 1870s-ish, the Duke of Rutland, sitting in his house at Haddon Hall with his own train station, check out my video on Lees Moor, decided it wasn't quite rural enough where he was, and he needed a country retreat from his country retreat. So we got the Longshore estate, and he used it as a shooting lodge for him and his buddies, how the other half live. Eventually that family, the Rutland family, sold the property to the Sheffield Corporation, which is one of those, doesn't exist anymore, it's one of those old school everything business. It did trains, it did water utilities, it built roads, built houses. And the plan was to develop it into a town, I suppose, I don't know. And Ethel stepped in, rang the alarm bells and said we need to protect this land. So she raised a petition that secured enough money to buy the entire estate. And then in 1927 she donated it to the National Trust, where it's been in the safe hands ever since. Well done, Ethel. Padley Gorge itself then, it used to be the border between Yorkshire and Derbyshire, but actually they moved it to a nearby road. But it's also the border between the White Peak in the south of the peaks generally, and the Dark Peak in the north of the peaks. So we're going to see a change in scenery today. We'll see much more moorland. It's the bedrock is a silica based bedrock. I'll just get over this stream rather than a limestone bedrock which you see in the White Peak. It's prone to flooding. It's not as porous as limestone. It's end up getting big areas of moorland flooded, which I'm hoping won't be the case today. But we shall see. So I've spent much of the past 2 miles just steadily climbing off of the River Derwent, and I've just hung a left to attack my first Ethel of the day, and as predicted it's rising pretty sharply and it's getting quite warm. I think I'm going to have to be careful with water today. Not always the best at drinking. We shall see. Just coming off Padley Manor. There's a gatehouse and chapel there. It was built in the 14th century, and it was a refuge for Catholics during Henry VIII's time. A couple of guys who ran the place, guys called Ludlam and Garlick, they were arrested and taken to Derby Castle and executed. And it's become a bit of a pilgrimage place for people in the Hallam diocese. If you're a Catholic in this area, you've almost certainly been to Padley. So right in the middle of Padley Gorge now. That's the Burbage Brook, babbling away. It's lovely to be out here today, it really is. Look, you have trees blocking our way. I'll figure out a way past that in a minute. So Padley Gorge was as spectacular as you would imagine. Couldn't do a massive amount of filming in there because it was full of families and kids and people running around. It's fantastic. We popped out onto some moorland. We've got Fox House pub just up the road there. Felt very much like how I expect Gimli to have felt as he transitioned from the Great Plains of Rohan and into the eaves of Fanghorn Forest to meet Treebeard with Legolas and go on a mission to the Vale of Isengard and the Tower of Orthanc to save his friends Merry and Pippin. Only for Pippin to grab the Palantir that Wormtongue threw out of a high window and give Sauron a false impression that Sauron had captured the hobbits and were torturing him for fun. Ultimately led to the demise of the entire Sauron Empire. Just because Gimli walked into a forest. Like that, but in reverse. I think we're unmistakably in the dark peak now. Beautiful heather bushes, giving everything a purple tinge, which is fantastic. It feels much more rugged up here than the previous 5 or 6 walks. Which had lots of nice greenery and farms and signs of civilization. Nothing up here. We're just coming up on Higger Tor for Ethel number 1 of the day, and 14 overall. Quite prominent, quite a nice big flat top to it. Some interesting archaeology, which we may or may not be able to talk about because there's lots of people up there. So I'm standing in the middle of a structure called Carl Wark. Can't really make it out now. It's thought to be 8th century BC. It's first discovered or rediscovered by a guy called Hayman Rook, who 1780s rounded Higger Tor, which is just there, look, you can see it in the background, and saw this structure. He thought it was a religious scene, a religious building. There's never any proof that it was. Our friend Thomas Bateman, the Barrow Knight, go check out my video on Hathersage. He thought that it was a military defence against the Holy Roman Empire, Constantine the Great. There were Romans in this part of the world back in that time, 8th century BC. Its actual use has never been really identified. Nobody really knows what it's here for, other than it's on a very old road called the Long Causeway, and there's some thoughts that it was actually never occupied. It was just a staging post. There it is, Higger Tor. 434 metres. Don't know how much of a prominence it's got, but from down here it looks quite a big one. Maybe it just missed out on being a Marilyn. Yeah, that's looking pretty steep. Here we go. Looks like we've got some hands-on rock climbing to do. Fun times. Hello, Future Liam here. So I'm up on top of Higger Tor. You get a much better view of Carl Walk. You can see the kind of prominence there. So from up here you can see much more of the actual building works. There's obvious piles of rubble left there from when it was a fort. You sort of see the retaining wall there. It's quite a substantial structure in its time for something that is very remote and potentially entirely uninhabited. So, I am going to claim this boulder here as Ethel number 14, Higger Tor. That's a good one today. If you can make out the mast onto William Hill just over there. Check out last week's video for that one. We're just on the top of Higger Tor. It's a fantastic view from up here. It's really, really nice. Got quite a big kind of plateau top, covered in heather, but it's a scramble to get up. And climbing up across several rather large boulders. But here we are. Next up, Stanage Edge. Also, when I was a cyclist, there's a road there. You could just make cars going up and down it. And in my more sadistic endeavours, when I was working in Sheffield, we would cycle up and down that road, and it was an utter spirit destroyer. And I was never fast at the best of times. Our times have changed. Ethel number 14, Stanage Edge. So I'm walking down Stanage Edge, just about make out the edge over there. 350 million years ago, this was underwater, under a shallow tropical sea, when Gondwana land was still a continent. So after Pangaea had broken up, but before modern day continents had taken their positions. It's made out of a silica-based stone called millstone grit, which extends from here all the way up the Pennines and then across into Ireland and North Wales. Plate tectonics being a thing, this entire region rose up in like a giant dome, and that's the edge there, which is millstone grit. Down in the valley floor lake you see much greener, much more lush. That is where the millstone was weathered away and it exposed the underlying limestone. There you go, carry on in a straight line over there. It's a black edge in Buxton, which is where this rock strata continues. Interestingly, there's some suggestion that it shares very strikingly similar characteristics to the rock that's found at the source of the River Ganges. So who knew that Sheffield and India's ancestral river would share commonality? Interesting. I've just turned off of Stanage Edge, heading up through the moors towards Stanage Pole, which is interesting. I was going to take you down to Robin Hood's cave, but it's full of people. Now, I know what you might be asking. Robin Hood in the Peak District? It's 25 miles as the crow flies to Sherwood Forest, and 35 miles to Nottingham Castle. It's quite the hike. Certainly got a long way to look if you're the Sheriff of Nottingham hunting down the fugitives. Maybe they did. Who knows? So just behind me there you've got Stanage Pole. Just over there is Stanage Edge. Peeking up there, look. There's been a pole there since 1550. It's a way marker for the Long Causeway, and it formed the border for quite a while between South Yorkshire and Derbyshire. That particular piece of wood was donated to the Peak District National Park by Hope Cement Factory in 2016. So it's not exactly new, but it is interesting. So just heading down to our final Ethel of the day, which will be High Neb. It's a grand total of 1 metre taller than Stanage Edge. That'll be the highest point of the day. One of the things I've really started to appreciate a lot is how much the weather changes the scenery. Today, a nice haze just hanging over the land, clinging to the valleys, kind of airbrushing detail out and giving everything an ethereal feel. And contrast that last week with the angry sleet on top of Sir William Hill, and then the very first outing to Musden Low, where Dovedale ended up blanketed in crisp white snow. I'm very much enjoying it, and I'm very grateful to be able to do this.
Where do we have to go down? Remember this last one as well?
Here we are, Ethel number 17. High Neb. This is the highest point I've been in all of my Ethel hunting so far, 458 metres. Beats out Stanage, which is there, by a whole metre. So we'll look at what we've got. Very nice. So from here I'm going to be heading back down the Derwent Valley to Hathersage and home. Just crested over the top of High Neb, and where Stanage was full of people, families running around, jumping up and down, enjoying themselves, climbers. Well, this place to myself, if only people were willing to go the extra 500 yards. I'm really enjoying this change of scenery. This brand new landscape, just a few miles further up the road. So it's finally time to get off of Stanage Edge, High Neb. There's only one way to do it. Straight over the top. Wish me luck. So at fairly regular intervals in these hills, you'll come across these things. Smiley face. They're millstones. Which is where the rock gets its name from, millstone grit. They were quarried here, they were mined here for many years. It's because the rock type is so perfect. There's another one, look. It's super durable, super hard. It's not very brittle, so it's not going to shatter. And they were shipped to all parts of the country. Probably mills near you, using Peak District's millstone grit. There's another one. They really are everywhere. So just heading down off of the edge. You see it behind me there. Horizon line. I've really enjoyed today's walk. I think it's been one of my favourites to date. One thing that's been conspicuously absent: animal life. Up above the edge on the moors. It's barren. It's not an easy life. Even the hardy sheep of the Peak District can't live up there. And the minute that I come down off the edge, there we go. Tick. So I'm just about half a mile off the bottom of High Neb. You get a real sense of the scale of the escarpment here. So you've got that Stanage there, and it tracks the horizon all the way across to High Neb, which is just poking out the other side of those trees. Impressive. Heading just a little further down into the valley, and we've finally got some cows. First time today. See them with a big white stripe down the middle there. They're called belted Galloways, but most people call them the Oreo cows, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's a good job they put that bridge there, otherwise I might have to turn back. So a couple of months into this journey, metaphorical and physical, I've been met with a warm response from YouTubers, or rather subscribers. First of all, thank you. I hope you enjoy what you see. There are many more to come. It was just reminding people why I'm bothering with all of this. So 10 years ago, I was in a cycling accident. I was within an hour or two of losing my leg, and I was told I'll never walk again. And it's been a battle. 10 years worth of operations and rehab and learning to walk again and figuring out what I can and can't do and learning what my limits are. And I thought this year, to celebrate the fact that I'll decide whether I'm walking or not, thank you very much, Western Medicine, I would walk every Ethel in the Peak District National Park. There's 95 of them. The peaks are on my doorstep, and I spend so little time here. So it felt like a nice way of connecting to a space that I should make better use of. And if that's interesting, then I hope you watch along. There will be many more stories to come. Hopefully some interesting facts, hopefully some fun, but you can decide. But I say like, share, subscribe, follow, all of the things. Do all of the things, press all of the buttons. Another perfect one to add to my list. Go check out the Pillsbury Hill video. It all makes sense. These guys don't seem the happiest. Just one or two lambs. We're lambing season soon. The first couple. There's one just behind that pack there. Let's see if we can get a shot of her. There we go, little buddy. This field will be full of them soon. So I'm just walking up to St Michael and All Saints Church. There it is, look. You know the bells there? Jangling away. Got a ring of 6 bells. The oldest being from 1520. Very old. The stained glass in the church, much of it came from another church, Lady Bower Church. Unfortunately, that church is now under 20 feet of water at the Lady Bower Reservoir. You're making good use of it still though. The reason I'm going up there is not that. Oh, you doubting Toms, thinking that Robin Hood did not have a hideout on Stanage Edge. It's a grave attributed to Little John of the Merry Men fame. Goes back as far as 1685, and John Shuttleworth claims, unverified, that there's a femur in that grave measuring 72 centimetres, which by modern day guessworking calculations would have made that individual over 8 feet tall. If it's the description, one slight problem: Robin Hood kicking around in the 12th, 13th, that kind of time period, 13th century. This grave is from 1685. Maybe Little John lived to be about 400 years old and is now buried in a churchyard in Hathersage. How is one to tell? So it's said that Little John attended the death of Robin Hood in 1247 at Kirklees Priory, Leeds Way. Moved back to Hathersage, lived in a cottage, possibly working in the nail industry. I presume that means masonry nails, knocking into wood and that kind of stuff, and not like a manicurist. Maybe he was a manicurist, who am I to judge? When he said that when he died, before he died, he fired an arrow from his bow for the last time And it said, wherever that falls, there shall I be buried. And luckily it landed in the church graveyard. So, you know, struck a luck that one, isn't it? I'm not going to lie, I'm struggling to sell this timeline of events as to why Little John is in a churchyard in Hathersage, buried in 1685. Sorry, Hathersage.